Good morning and welcome to the Future Panther Academy. My name is Bonnie Fujiasco. I serve as the Special Events Manager for the Alumni Association at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Thank you all for joining us here today. We have a very special guest on today's episode. His name is Phil Sklar. Phil is a UWM alum from the class of 2006 with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, where he majored in finance. From there, Phil went on to receive his MBA from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management and a Master of Science in Accounting from the University of Notre Dame. Phil is with us today as the co-founder and CEO of the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum, located right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The museum has 6,500 bobbleheads on display of the 11,000 bobbleheads in their collection. Oh my. Today, Phil is going to take us on a very special behind the scenes tour of the museum, and he's going to tell us all about how this all began. Phil, we are so thankful that you're joining us here today. Thank you so much, and take it away.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks for having me, and hello to everybody out there watching. Excited to give you a tour and tell you a little bit more about my time at UWM and answer some questions at the end. But here we are at the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum. As Bonnie mentioned, we have about 6,500 unique bobbleheads on display. So I'll give you a little walkthrough and point out some of the unique features and other exhibits. We're in a building that, as you can see here, located just downtown area of Milwaukee in what's called Walker's Point area. The building is from the turn of the century, so it has some really cool features, historic style building. So here is where visitors can come in the museum. Right now, we've been closed since about March 14th because of the coronavirus, but we'll hopefully be opening soon with some additional safety precautions. But this is the bobblehead capital of the world, the only museum in the world dedicated to bobbleheads. And really, the whole thing started at UWM. So we'll get into that in just a minute here, but the A to Z wall has one bobblehead for every sports team, NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB in alphabetical order. We also have a store which has about 500 different bobbleheads and merchandise as well available for purchase. Our welcome desk, which normally would have somebody there welcoming visitors to the museum. Here's a look at the store. We also have an online store, which is where we do most of our business. We produce bobbleheads that people can purchase and that we market and sell and ship across the world. So here's a look at some of the non-sports, political and presidential bobbleheads here, as well as some of the merchandise and other items that people can buy. So the Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum really started with me and the other co-founders collection, which started in 2003. The other co-founder and I both are from Rockford, Illinois, and we came to Milwaukee to attend UWM in 2002. And during the summer, he was working for the Rockford Riverhawks, which is a minor league team in Rockford, and they gave away bobbleheads for the first time, and he got one. And we thought, hey, let's start a collection. We're big sports fans, so we'd go to sports, games anyway. We'd go to the Brewers and Bucks and Admirals and a Wave game a couple a year. And we figured why not go to a bobblehead game and grow that collection. So we have a timeline that tells a little bit more about the history of bobbleheads and also about the museum. So the first bobblehead in the collection was Rocco the Riverhawk in 2003. So we collected slowly over time. The collection grew from that one bobblehead to 10 and then 20, and then before we knew it, we had hundreds and then thousands of bobbleheads. At the same time, 2013, Michael Pohl, who's a manager for basically all the athletic teams at UWM and is also a Special Olympian, we wanted to honor him with the bobblehead. So we thought, let's reach out to UWM. They didn't really have the budget for it in the athletic department, so we took matters into our own hands and said, let's produce bobbleheads of Michael and raise money for Special Olympics. And we had a really good experience with that. And during that time, we said, hey, there's a need in the market to produce bobbleheads and market them. And we started the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame Museum in 2014 with the goal of opening a physical museum that's one of a kind and also producing unique bobbleheads. So that's really what got it started. When we met Michael our freshman year in the dorms, he was running all over campus and we always saw him. So we, started talking to him, and soon we were taking him to Bucks or Brewers games and became really good friends with him and his family. So that's sort of how it got started. And then also the experience at UWM. I was a finance major, as Bonnie mentioned, which gave me the background to, do some of this and also to grow and academically. From UWM, right after graduation, I went to Notre Dame for the master's in accounting. And then following that, worked in corporate finance and public accounting for about 9 years. In that year period is when I went to Northwestern to get the MBA. And, all of that wouldn't have been possible without my experiences at UWM, both, just with general classes, the honors college, a lot of the extracurricular experiences I had, and a lot of the, really great educational experiences. So we can talk more about that in the question and answer session as well. But here you see some of the oldest bobbleheads in the collection. Some of the very first sports bobbleheads are the ones with the square bases there for both baseball and football. But really bobbleheads representing every team in all different periods. And then a lot of the older non-sports bobbleheads here. The very first bobbleheads actually date back to the late 1700s. There's a replica painting of Queen Charlotte in her dressing room at Buckingham Palace, and she has these two figurines behind her. Those similar pair sold for about $35,000 at auction recently. Some of the earliest pop culture bobbleheads are the Beatles, very popular set from the 1960s. And then some of the very first sports bobbleheads featured Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, Roberto Clemente, and Willie Mays. So those were the first player-specific bobbleheads. And really, bobbleheads were really popular in the 60s. Then they died off a little bit, but then in 1999, the San Francisco Giants gave away bobbleheads at a baseball game for the first time. And teams saw how crazy fans went for them, and the rest is history, as they say. Bobbleheads have been the most popular promotion at stadiums ever since. A couple other fun things. National Bobblehead Day is January 7th every year. So we created that day about 5 years ago to celebrate bobbleheads, and it's become a trending topic on Twitter and social media every year since on the 7th. We also have a penny press machine where people can get a souvenir penny. One of our, you can see up here, just arrived the samples of Dr. Fauci, who over the past several months has gained a lot of prominence. On April 1st, we released his bobblehead for pre-order, and within a week, it became our best-selling bobblehead of all time. We've actually now raised over $230,000 for the Protect the Heroes Fund to support hospital and clinic workers fighting against COVID-19 and getting them the protective equipment they need through the sales of Dr. Fauci and then Dr. Birx and some governors that we produced after that. Here we have a wall of champions, which has the current champions for all the leagues. The Chiefs are going to be replacing the Patriots there, as those just came in. We have the Bobble headquarters, which is our office. The Bobblehead ideas come to life. The other co-founder, Brad, also went to UWM. And so that's where a lot of the Bobblehead ideas are made. We also have what was our biggest bobblehead, a 6-foot tall bobblehead there that makes a great photo app for visitors. And then we have a lot of the bobbleheads that we've produced. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we also produce bobbleheads, which is the biggest revenue source for the museum, like Dr. Fauci. We produced this series of Negro Leagues bobbleheads, which we're really proud of. We have over 50 bobbleheads produced, honoring a lot of the pioneers in baseball who at their time when they were playing couldn't play on the same field as white players because of the color of their skin. And obviously, it's important to recognize those players and realize their struggles and learn about what they had to overcome. Some more bobbleheads that we've produced. And then we have a lot of new arrivals. We're always getting in new bobbleheads. A lot of them come from people who will send them in or teams that send them in. And in other cases, new bobbleheads that we might get from a game or from whatever source it might be. Mascots are one of the favorite categories of bobbleheads. Throughout the museum, there's a lot of different panels that talk a little bit more about each section and the history of that section. The local section here has all the Wisconsin bobbleheads. So Brewers and Bucks and all the minor league teams throughout the state, like the Mallards and Lakeshore Chinooks. And of course the colleges. So we have Pounce, of course, here, our favorite mascot. And then Demetrius Harris, who actually played basketball at UWM and is currently in the NFL. So a fun story. A lot of times you'll be watching an NFL game and hear him talking about how Demetrius played basketball at UWM and now is in the NFL. Packers and other area teams. We have bobblehead news. So some of the features about the museum or bobbleheads that we produced or just bobbleheads in general. We were lucky enough to be featured in the New York Times 36 Hours in Milwaukee, so featuring places to go and see when you're in Milwaukee. We also have a map where people can put a pin where they came from. So we've had visitors from across the country, as you can see here, I think with the pins. Within a few months of opening, we had visitors from all 50 states. And then behind here is the international map, and we've had visitors from about 25 different countries. From as far away as Australia, New Zealand, China, and really anywhere and everywhere. And it's fun to talk to those visitors and find out, what brought them here, why they're interested. But it really is a one-of-a-kind attraction, something that you're not going to find anywhere else. And Milwaukee, people ask why Milwaukee, and it's really we love Milwaukee, and also the fact that there is no home for bobbleheads, no birthplace for them. So Milwaukee is a natural spot because people in Wisconsin are as bobblehead crazy as anywhere else in the world. And we've traveled to almost every baseball stadium in Major League Baseball, and did our research prior to opening. So in the back here is all the non-sports bobbleheads. So all the TV, movies, music, Harry Potter to Star Wars, and really anything and everything. Some of my favorites are the Home Alone bobbleheads that we had produced. And Macaulay Culkin was actually one of our first celebrity visitors who just randomly stopped by to do he was in Milwaukee doing some filming for social media and decided to stop by the museum and take some pictures and videos. So that was a lot of fun. Some more non-sports bobbleheads, comics, and really anything and everything that's been turned into a bobblehead is represented. Our newest and tallest bobblehead is Vladimir Guerrero. He's actually a 7-foot tall bobblehead that was gifted to us by the company that produced it. He's a baseball Hall of Famer. This is him in his minor league jersey, so definitely a lot of fun. I'll take you over here to the wall of Wisconsin legends. So this area features a lot of different Wisconsinites or people who made their fame in Wisconsin. So you'll see a bio about each one. and learn a little bit more about them. So everything from Vince Lombardi to Harry Houdini, Hank Aaron, and some of the mascots and other notable people. Behind me here is a wall where people can put their favorite bobbleheads that they've seen at the museum. So visitors enjoy sharing that. And then next spot is what bobblehead people want to see next. So all different types of suggestions from Ed Sheeran to Baby Yoda, and just a really eclectic mix. And a lot of times we'll look at those and turn some of those ideas into bobbleheads, which is a lot of fun. And then after the Wisconsin legends are the sort of international icons and stars like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Helen Keller, Nelson Mandela, and just a mix from sports and non-sports of people who have changed the world, really. Here's Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier for baseball. And so we have a few more of those along this wall. Then we get into the non-sports bobbleheads, which is, or the rest of the non-sports bobbleheads are politicians, some of the historic presidents, some advertising characters. And then that's when the sports bobblehead starts. So everything from wrestling to boxing, UFC, just a mix of everything. Then hockey, and then college, football, and then it gets into basketball and baseball, which we'll get to in a minute. There's also panels about how bobbleheads are made, so a little bit about the production process. And you can also go through, we put it on our website just before the quarantine started, a virtual tour, which is at bobbleheadhall.com/virtual tour. And you can actually walk through, like I'm taking you, but go 360 degrees and control, up and down, and walk around the museum at your own pace. So there's a little bit look at the process. It starts with the clay mold that's molded by hand, and then the mold is finalized, and then they're painted. So pretty simple. And bobbleheads have really remained pretty consistent over all the years. They've gotten more complex and more detailed, but they're really a body, spring, and head. And I think that's one of the things that makes them so popular and made them a sort of a pop culture icon. Everybody knows what a bobblehead is. Some more of the basketball. This panel talks a little bit about some of the people who have contributed bobbleheads. Bobblehead Bob donated over 1,500 unique bobbleheads to the museum when he was diagnosed with cancer and wanted his bobbleheads to go to somewhere where people could enjoy them. So we were able to accept that donation and put a lot of his bobbleheads on display and also honor him. His story about the donation was even featured on CNN and ESPN, which was really cool since he was able to see that. The rest, a lot of baseball bobbleheads, and baseball is the biggest category just because there's so many teams and so many games. Before Dr. Fauci, our best-selling bobblehead was Sister Jean from Loyola Chicago, who is the nun who is with the team and during their surprise run to the Final Four a few years ago. The rest of the baseball bobbleheads are here. And then we also have a panel dedicated to Michael, which, as I mentioned, was the first bobblehead. And we probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Michael and our experience at UWM and meeting Michael at UWM. So it's pretty cool to sort of come full circle and see that in UWM. And then that leads back into the store where people can make a purchase before heading out and enjoying some other things that Milwaukee and the area has to offer. So with that, I'd love to take any questions that you have, and thank you for joining and watching today.
Okay, here comes our first question, Phil. How many of the items in the collection were acquired by you and your partner, and how many were donated?
Yeah, so the first about 3,000 were when we had our collection over from 2003 to about 2013, and then the rest, for the most part, have been sent in by teams and people across the country. We really haven't had to do too much work in terms of going out and acquiring bobbleheads, although a lot of the ones, we've produced probably about 700 or 800 bobbleheads now since then, and those are part of the museum as well.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, can you talk about the process of how a bobblehead is actually created?
Yes, so the bobblehead, it starts with an idea, and every day we're thinking of new ideas for bobbleheads. There's always something new going on in pop culture or sports that can be turned into a bobblehead or a new superstar. So we're always looking at those ideas. Once we have an idea, we have graphic designers who will turn that into a drawing of, visualize what the bobblehead will look like. From there, we tweak the drawing if necessary, but once it looks great, the factory will make a clay mold out of hand from that drawing. And then once that's approved, we have it painted. And once that's approved, they're produced and shipped over and then shipped out. We have a fulfillment center in Milwaukee that handles all our fulfillment. So we can send them thousands of orders in a day and they'll get them all shipped out usually in the same day.
Wow, that's really cool. Thank you. Our next question, are bobblehead body molds reused and just changing the head?
Yeah, so good question. In most cases, they are a completely unique mold and something that starts from scratch. We do have on our website the ability to create custom bobbleheads. So if you want to get a bobblehead for a family member or friend, we offer that service. And in a lot of those cases, there's pre-made bodies that you can choose from. There's hundreds of different ones. So those are reused. But if we were to produce, a new bobblehead of, Pounce the Panther, it'd probably be a new mold because we would make it in a new pose.
Okay. All right. And here's our next question. What is the strangest request you have received for a custom bobblehead?
Yeah, there's definitely some strange requests. Most of them are pretty standard, but I guess the strangest we have probably is somebody sitting on a toilet. And, there's obviously inside jokes and things like that. And I think that's probably the strangest one I can think of.
Okay. That answers that question. Here's our next question. Where do you produce your bobbleheads?
Yep. So all bobbleheads, actually since the beginning, have been produced in the Asia Pacific region. They've shifted from Japan to Korea to now China. So almost every bobblehead today is produced in China. The only one that in the museum that we looked at that wasn't would be that 6 foot tall bobblehead, which was made using 3D printing technology and 360-degree scanning. So basically we just took a scan of the regular size bobblehead and then a company produced that 6 foot one based off the scans here in the US. And so eventually that could be something that happens with the regular size bobbleheads as well, which would be great to have them produced in the US. But like a lot of things that are mass produced, they're produced in China for obvious cost reasons. Just would be not feasible to have them produced domestically at this point, given the costs. And they are hand painted as well, which adds a lot of detail to them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Here comes our next question. Do you usually choose the bobbleheads you create, or is it from requests?
So it's definitely a mix. We get a lot of requests both at the museum on the wall that I showed you, and people email in or send in requests on social media. So we're always keeping our eyes out on those. And if we see a pattern or, see trends, we'll jump on those quickly. With Dr. Fauci as an example, we were watching the news like everybody else intently, early in March and April, May, and seeing, Dr. Fauci on the news nearly every day in April and March. We were like, we have to do a bobblehead of him, but we had also received some requests. So we knew, something that there could be a market for. We didn't know that we would, sell over 35,000 of them in a, that short of a period. But, I think it is important to, listen to the customers and see what they want, and also look at, trends. We're always watching for the newest stars like Zion Williamson or players who show a lot of potential. But also on the non-sport side, there's a lot of room in the market for new bobbleheads. There's a lot of musicians who've never had bobbleheads, and we're always working on getting those produced.
All right. And our next question, what bobblehead is not in your collection that you really want? Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a great question. So, a lot of people think we have them all, but we don't. There's definitely some on the wish list. I guess if there was one on the timeline, there's a New York Yankees 14-inch bobblehead that stores use to showcase the fact that they sold bobbleheads in early 1960s. They had these jumbo ones that were only made for the stores, and they only made a few of the Yankees bobbleheads, and one sold for about $60,000. So that'd be a great one to add to the collection if we could find one.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. And here's our final question for this morning. What is your favorite UWM memory?
So I'd have to say following the basketball team through the Sweet 16 journey. Me and Brad and a lot of us got really excited for UWM sports teams during our time there, and supported the basketball and soccer teams. And the Sweet 16 team, which is now 15 years ago, I believe, was just a lot of fun. We went to, I think, every home game, and then also followed the team in the NCAA tournament, and we're there, to see them clinch the spot in the Sweet 16. And that was a great time for the city and for the university, and really probably my biggest memory.
Awesome. Well, Phil, thank you again so much for your time today. The tour was awesome. For folks who are watching, again, visit the website at the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum, and you can find more information. You can take that virtual tour that Phil told you about at your own pace and just check things out. Again, this was an awesome morning. Thank you so much, Phil, for sharing this with us and your time. And this has just been a great, great show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bonnie. Have a great day, everybody.